we've talked about attention quite a bit this week already, and we're here to make sure that we keep the progress going with attention. You know, we're not in a stage where we're proving the value of attention anymore. We've done that. Dentsu was really a pioneer working together with Lumen in kind of starting that attention conversation and putting into place the methodology to make it happen. It's now a reality. It's a reality across our planning, across markets, etc. And we want to make sure that what we do is keep progressing it, keep being pioneers at it. And one topic in particular is not keeping attention at the top of the funnel, but making sure that we take it closer to commerce as well. So I'll start with you, Mike. Can you tell us a little bit, as the expert on attention methodology, how it's been evolving across the last couple of years and how it's been more and more infiltrating the core of the planning craft?
Yeah, it is interesting. Dentsu have been working on attention for around about 6 years now. Initially we wanted to understand the differences between media. We all know that TV advertising probably gets more attention than posters or out of home. But how much more? So you can put a number on those things to understand the volume of attention. The second thing that we had to understand is, and by doing lots of big studies about these things, is the cost of attention, linking that to how much money you pay for things and understanding where the bargains in the market are, where the arbitrage opportunities are, so that you can start investing your money in things that people do engage with and crucially avoid often the vast majority of ads that just get ignored entirely. But the third thing is understanding the value of attention, how attention, both visual and audio, converts into memory or into money. And that's always been at the heart of the Dentsu approach, but it was never, we always, even from day one, we did that. But it's taken a while for us to sort of digest the first two questions about volume and cost of attention, to now really, really concentrate on the thing that really matters, which is outcomes. And those outcomes can be, you know, we're going to be talking a lot about what you call the bottom of the funnel, sales and things, but a very legitimate advertising outcome is memory and persuasion and recall. And the last couple of years, that's where we've been focusing the research, but crucially, that's where we've been focusing the tools that Dentsu have available. You have to build tools that you can use so that you can have a commercial impact. But that has also, by using those tools, we've actually learned something about attention. You know, the doing of attention is also learning about attention, that the practice informs the theory. So it's a really exciting journey from understanding the volume of the attention that you get from different media to the cost to now the value. But there's so much more to learn on that third bit.
That's great.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have another for you, but let me know if you need a break. That's great, Mike. And so, of course, you know, we don't need to make the case for attention when it comes to top of funnel, brand equity, etc. But as we get closer to commerce, some people might say, we've got lots of indication that people are paying attention, more of your engagement type metrics that show that people are leaning in. Why do we need the same attention methodology closer to commerce?
Well, a sale is produced by lots of different factors at the same time. The advertising, the creative, but also the price that you're paying for, the demand from the competition's activities. Using sales as your outcome, as your explanatory variable is very hard, because that's the thing you want to explain, and all the differences are in there. So just looking at the outcomes and just going, well, I'll see what works. You don't know why it's working. That's the crucial thing. And to be able to understand the independent variables that lead to the dependent variables. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is we also have another indicator, which isn't a sale or a brand lift study, but it's a click. Attribution models. And I think as we have done more and more work on that, we have realized what utter bullshit most of these attribution models are, and that they've been giving us false information. And we've been optimizing to the wrong things. And attention data is quite useful, A, in saying that the emperor has no clothes. This data does not correlate to that data. Something must be wrong. But also explaining why those attribution models, those last-click attribution models, must be so inadequate. So I think that we are all in the business. Henna works for a company that doesn't really care about attention, but does very much care about selling beer. Your desire is to make more memories or make more money. But the attention data helps you understand why that's happening and how to do it better. And that's why I think it's as useful at the top of the funnel as at the bottom.
Right. And Hannah then. So Carlsberg started working with Dentsu about 18 months ago now, and you guys have been very enthusiastically adopting attention since the beginning. We now have, benchmarks in markets for attention. We're taking it into retail media. We've progressed really fast in kind of really testing and understanding attention. What impact have you seen either in markets or with the creative process and how you approach attention?
Yeah, for us, attention has been a critical part of working with Dentsu for the past 18 months now. And we started our journey with attention last year of doing a bespoke model for us in our key markets, China and UK included. And I think we were the ones to do, first to do attention in China, so which was also really interesting. And what we saw from that is that we were already quite good at taking the attention that we saw for our ads and taking that into brand recall, but we didn't understand why. So we had this what we call the Carlsberg effect, and then we started unpacking what does that Carlsberg effect mean, because we saw that we were performing better than some of the Dentsu benchmarks that you've been creating for the 6-8 years now. And so this for us set a lot of new hypotheses. Why is that? What is the Carlsberg effect? Is it creative? Is it the strength of the brand? Is it the channels? Is it the frequency of message? Is it multiple touch points? So we then started working with Lumen, and with what we've created now, and what we continue with the work is we are tagging billions of our impressions across about 35 markets now. And we have, together with Lumen and Dentsu, created one of the industry first brand models. And what that means is we're taking that data and putting that into CCS Planner, so our teams can actually start activating on attention. So we're going beyond the theory of attention, but actually starting to then activate it on it. And what it helps us is we're faster at testing. We're faster at looking at, through the consumer journey and understanding different touch points. And that's what it would spend for us. I personally just love the idea of attention because it's really simple. For our creative to work, it needs to be seen. To me, that's just, it's a lot of common sense, but it's not common sense that we're always doing. And it's not about maximizing attention, but for us is understanding how much attention we need in each of the touch points to reach our brand objectives. So sometimes it's also looking at how little attention we need so that we can get attention cost effectively. And it's not same for all of our brands. And that's when we started looking also on what's the difference of, we have over 100 brands. What's the difference between our brands? What's the strength of the brands? And what are the different elements that then, affect this attention? And we know that, of course, channel is one, strength of brand is one, and creative.
Yeah, and we really can't overestimate how far ahead you are, kind of in the alcohol category, but the advertising industry in general, because lots of people talk about attention, but that level of applying it with tailored norms has really been a really fast and great process. Has it changed conversation with your leadership? Do they care?
Starting to. We're still on that journey. We're about a year in, so driving impact and driving change in the business is of course a big thing. But what it does, it brings creative and media together. It becomes everything under the same goal. So understanding, what we already understand more, what we need to do in creative, what in creative drives attention. So it's just bringing that closer together.
Thank you. And Dan, if we take a slightly broader view across all of our iProspect clients, how do we make sure it doesn't become just this hygiene factor, but we keep moving it forward and finding new opportunities?
So I think the interesting thing for us, and the thing we're always searching for our clients, is that competitive advantage. What's the thing that creates an uneven playing field, which is tilted in favor of the likes of Carlsberg? And this is what attention does. But in order to keep that competitive advantage, you've got to innovate, you've got to continually experiment, you've got to make sure you measure anything and everything you can. And our job is always to look for that edge and to continue looking for that edge, because we know if we stay still, then our competition is going to catch up on us. So the opportunity and the challenge for us is to keep on pushing and working with the likes of Mike and his team. That's what we're able to do. But it's that partnership and that creation of unique sets of data which are specific to each client and the brands that gives you that competitive edge, which I think is surely what we're all here to do.
Les, if I come to you now, you're working with Dentsu on our brand reset project.
Not officially.
Oh, I'm sorry, I said nothing.
You're undercover.
Obviously, you started caring about attention in the world of media. A lot of people would...
I've always cared about attention. That's why I'm here.
That's it.
I love attention.
And that's what I want to make right, because I think, some people think about what you did in terms of it's about putting your investment in the right place and 60-40 and all of these. And you always cared about creative effectiveness, of course. But when did the topic of the quality of exposure become a burning topic for you?
Actually, I'd like to shift the narrative here, I think. It's quite interesting that we in marketing have a terrible tendency to make these things very abstract. Now, I love all the stuff you're doing and all the things you're saying, but we've begun to create this crust of words that kills what's at the heart of it. So stop thinking like marketers and advertisers and media owners and all that sort of thing, and start thinking like ordinary people. Ordinary people don't give a fuck about brands. They don't give a fuck about your products. They don't give a fuck about your ads, and they mostly ignore your ads. They screen them out. Now, we talked about this the other day, didn't we?
Well, that's what the data says, yeah. So it's not just your sweary opinion. No. It's actually factually correct.
Exactly. But then every ordinary person knows this, because if you think about yourself, you walk down the street, you're bombarded by ads, and you don't see or care about any of them. And so earlier, I think you talked about engagement metrics, clicks and stuff like that. So a typical click-through rate for an online ad, I mean, I'm a bit out of touch. Less than 1%, isn't it?
0.1%,
yeah, that would be the
when you see we have doubled it, it goes from 0.1 to 0.2.
Yeah. So now let's think about that the right way. 99.9% of the ads that you serve are not clicked on. Basically, nothing you do has any effect on anyone 99.9% of the time. And then 0.1% of the time, you get a little bit of a tickle. And the point is, because what most of you do is boring, irrelevant, it's in the way, it gets in the way of ordinary people's lives. So now, you talked about managing attention, measuring attention, optimizing attention, that the factors involve creative and media and stuff like that. And these are all good things, and they're all very true. But put it round the other way. how do we actually do something that's interesting? How do we do something that, you know, your mum, your kid will actually find interesting, and they just might remember it, or they just might do something as a result of it. Now, so that's the point of all this stuff, which I'm a huge fan of, but I do think there's also a point here, which is we have to stop with the jargon bullshit and put ourselves into the shoes of the people we're talking to, which is, I think, a good principle for all communication.
One way of saying it is not put yourself in their shoes, but see through their eyes, which
Well,
of course
yeah.
is often what the eye track is. It literally helps you understand that the way that people actually engage with your stuff, which is often fleeting, if at all.
Yeah.
And you may have made an ad that tests very well when you force people to watch it for 30 seconds, but in reality, when people are at home watching TV, they usually watch TV with this device in their hand. So your actual experience of advertising is distracted and limited, let alone posters as you're walking past. But Tiffin wanted us to have a fight, and Les and I used to work together, and I love the man. I genuinely love him. So it's very
Likewise.
difficult to have.
Bromance.
Very, very different. Yeah, exactly. There's some pictures of us wearing makeup together, which I. But I am going to disagree with you on this one, because you come from a creative background, which I think is very important. I started at DDB, worked with Les there.
I'm an ex-physicist.
On the calculus we make with advertising is, if only we could make something worth watching, people would watch it. And therefore, the onus on us is to earn attention. Doing something that is, and it's interesting, English is the metaphors we use there, you pay attention and you earn attention. They're very transactional metaphors. Portuguese people lend attention, which they're much nicer than the English. The Germans gift it, by the way. But that assumes that you earn this. But I'm going to actually say there's another way that advertising works, which is not necessarily about demanding great amounts of attention. It's realizing that it's all about salience, and that people go through their life and they are exposed to Coca-Cola, or dare I say Carlsberg, multiple times in the day, and you might just notice a little bit here and a little bit there, and it all adds up. Now that's psychologically a very different way of conceptualizing advertising, rather than this how do I get people to really engage? It's how can I be at the moment so that they are that they have this sort of mere exposure effect.
Yeah.
And I think what the attention data helps us understand is that both ways of communicating work, and they both work in tandem. So when the media guys say be in the right place at the right time, they're right. When the creative guy is saying do something interesting, they're right. You're both right at the same time.
Oh, so I mean, let me be clear. I'm in no way criticising anything you said. I totally agree with you. But I just think it's helpful. What you said about see through their eyes, did you just make that up?
No.
Oh.
Sometimes I make things up.
But because that is a very good way to sell what you do. And actually, I think that's exactly what we should be trying to do all the time. We need to toggle back and forth between the what levers can we pull and the what is it like at the other end. And it's not just about creative. I worked for 37 years in a creative agency, but actually I'm old enough to have worked when it was full service. And people often said about me was, you're the media guy in the creative agency. And I think media is really, really important. And I don't think every ad has to be, John Lewis. Not every ad has to be a Grand Prix winner. It's just about understanding what state of mind people are in when they see your stuff. Because what people find interesting, as we talked about this the other day, that what people find interesting is different depending on what state they're in. Some people, if you're not thinking of buying a car ad is just a piece of branded entertainment. If you're about to buy a car, you're much more interested. Henna, you said something which I thought was quite interesting, and which you're talking about, if you like, how much attention and the cost effectiveness of attention. And there's a real point there, which is there may well be situations where good enough ads in bulk is all you need. You need, like you see, you're just surrounding people with something that just keeps constantly reminding them is enough. But I think it's important that we see through people's eyes, put yourself in people's shoes. And that goes beyond mere ads. It also goes, it's the whole, like the environments ads appear in. Once you start, you know, we're optimizing our little banner ad, and you think of like an ordinary person scrolling through the Daily Mail website, and there's this torrent of shite, you know, and you go, well, no wonder none of it works.
So putting ourselves in people's shoes, as we get closer to commerce, as you said, you know, kind of maybe people want more direct, simpler information there, but there's still a lot of creative effort that is put in brand building versus conversion. What should creative and media do together to raise attention closer to the point of commerce, you think?
So I have a view about this, and Mike will definitely have views about this, and I don't know whether or not we entirely agree. I think we
Probably.
Probably, mostly.
Well, I don't know what you're going to say yet.
But,
you're going to swear more.
Yeah, I probably will. Fuck it, yeah. Sorry, I'm just like a junior Ritson, really. So if you think about a person and what state they're in when they're watching an ad or exposed to an ad or whatever, if the goal is to be interesting in some way, you have to understand what they're interested in at that moment. Now, the bulk of your ads, really almost no matter what you do, even with clever targeting, the bulk of them will be served to people who have no interest in your product, your brand, and are not going to buy. However, if you've done your job well, you'll reach people who are one day might buy. But, so when we talk about brand building, we talk about the aim is, broadly speaking, to reach anyone who might buy the product in the next 2 or 3 years. So if it's toilet roll, it's all people. If it's Volkswagen, it's maybe anyone who drives a car or who might learn to drive, might buy a car in the next couple of years. But those people are not interested in your product, your brand, or what you have to say. So you have to think like an entertainer in a sense. Actually, I'm going to row back from that, because entertainment's not the only way of doing it. But you have to do something that's inherently interesting. You used a phrase about ornament.
Well, my mother used to say, and sometimes still does, that I am neither use nor ornament, which means that I'm useless, but also not very pretty. And I think that it's quite a useful thing for us to think about advertising. It should. Sometimes advertising has an ornamental role, and sometimes it is useful. You need. I am thirsty. I can't remember think of what to drink. Carlsberg is there. That's all you need. But it's a useful message to receive at that time. Whereas at other times, you want to be entertained by these things and the ornamental function of these things.
Or just a reminder if you already know the brand, if you have a strong brand, so that brand memory that you already have.
Yes, exactly. So there could be useful value. Lower funnel might be more utility based. Upper funnel might be a bit more ornamental.
Yeah. So your mum, was she? She's quoting or paraphrasing a quote from, is it William Morris?
Yeah.
Yeah. So have nothing in your home which is neither beautiful or useful. And I mean that's actually, you could apply that to marketing. Have nothing in your marketing plan that is neither beautiful or useful. Beautiful is not quite the right word, but inherently interesting. So the bulk of your budget, and Peter and I talked about the 60-40 rule. It's not as iron as that, and there will be a mix that is right for different brands in different situations. But the bulk of your budget should be spent on stuff which is broad in reach and inherently interesting and memorable, because you're creating memories which will one day turn into sales. But a smaller part of your budget should be aimed at the, maybe 5% of the market who are actually actively interested at the moment. And at that point, as you say, it's about being more useful. I think it's useful to think of it as almost like customer service before the sale. You know, what can you do to make the decision and the purchase process as seamless and easy as possible? So you have to shift perspective again and go, okay, well, I'm no longer charming or seducing or entertaining you. I'm now helping you to achieve whatever your life goals are at that moment. And it's a very tricky thing to do, but and I think at that point where people do become interested and you're, you know, this is the world of performance marketing, activation, bottom of the funnel, whatever bit of jargon you're going to use. But at that point, you have permission to do things like tell them where the store is, you know, or where, here's a link to click on to buy.
Or yes, exactly. Go left to get to a bar where they serve Carlsberg.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favourite ones is if you come out of the Leicester Square tube station in London, one of the exits, there's a little thing that just says McDonald's 200 yards to the right. Well, that's, you know, that's...
It's a very good bottom of the funnel ad.
Yeah.
Do we get surprised sometimes, Mike in particular, by what channels can do? Because we feel we understand what works in the long, what works in the short, video advertising, search ads, etc. Why do we bother creating all of those norms at a market and at a category level? Do we sometimes get surprised by what channels can do in different markets?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I think actually, Hannah, your experience in China is going to be very helpful here, because I think when we started working together, we had an assumption that TV did this, and display did this, and some Chinese media did something in between or something. Conducting the research, I think, has helped us, has reinforced some things, but also challenged others. Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, so when we looked at the global studies that we've done, consumer behavior towards advertising is consistent in markets. So how we scroll, how we, swipe and skip, that's consistent across the markets. And also what's consistent is the amount of attention specific channels and platforms generate. But we did have a nuance in China with a platform that has a double scrolling fee. And surprisingly, that double scrolling fee is generating much more attention than any of our other scrolling formats that we see. And to me, that's surprising because you think that there's more things going on and there would be less because you have a double scrolling, so there's double the information, but it's actually also creating double the attention.
And I think that what's interesting about this is a different visual culture in China. So for us, the consistencies where Facebook, that's not a good example because that's not in China, but where you have exactly the same media formats, you get pretty much exactly the same results in China. But Chinese websites look extremely busy to my eyes. They look quite messy, but to my sort of rather boring sort of one by one sort of approach. But obviously this works very well in China, where just a different visual sensibility, because that's very culturally dependent. So, the consistencies in media is one thing, but it reveals in many ways inconsistencies and differences by culture. So that's why where you can learn something interesting about humanity, that you weren't expecting there. I mean, and it must be as well just thinking about the outcomes side of things, seeing how. We started this by talking about how attention is only interesting if it relates to the outcomes. I think we've seen very different results in different markets from how much attention you need to drive an outcome for Carlsberg. I mean, that I always find interesting.
I think when we talk about winning the battle, you win the battle by being able to bring a different kind of approach depending on the challenge that you have. Different markets pose different challenges. Your brands are perceived differently in different markets. They're in different stages. So being able to take a data set and build a data set that informs how you come to market in relation to that brand at that stage to that audience on that specific platform in that market gives you that unfair advantage that we want our clients to have.
I mean, Henna, you must have this all the time where local markets are saying, well, central team has produced this, but the Vietnamese market is different. Presumably every market says that we need our own creative. And so, this data, I think, can sometimes help you. Well, actually, some markets really are different. It's not just complaining. Vietnam is in a pioneer stage where Denmark is, at a and then rather than just having an argument about it, you can have some data to distinguish.
Yeah, that's really what it is when we look at global brands that have a consistent creative across the markets, is understanding how much of the journey where they are as a brand, how much that impacts the attention that they get in each of those markets.
And again, I think that teaches you something, to go back to Les's point, about it's seeing through people's eyes here. The core skill that advertisers or people who work in advertising agencies should have is empathy. The ability to put yourselves in the shoes of a young mother, or someone searching for a mortgage, or a thirsty drinker, or something like that. The thing that we should be recruiting young planners on is how empathetic are you? And the data sets that we should be employing should aid that sort of radical empathy. They should be tools for empathy, because that's how we can teach the algorithms what humans are like. So that's the first thing that I think we should do. The second thing is, and I go back to something Henna said about buying the right level of attention here, is this concept of satisficing, of being good enough. Humans, there is too much world out there and to fit into our heads, and so we use selective attention just to pick things up, that we need to, and we satisfice. We don't maximize. We get enough information to do, but businesses satisfice as well. It would be inefficient for Carlsberg just to buy cinema ads. Cinema ads get tons of attention. They're bloody amazing, but they're very expensive, and rightly so. But they don't. So what you do is you come up with a plan to get the right level of attention for the budget that's available to drive the results. For me, what I've learned from a decade of attention research, and especially from the year and a half we've been working with Carlsberg, is to start with the sort of the empathy angle. See everything through other people's eyes, and then secondly, start to go back to what Henna was saying, make sure that you're using that information sort of within bounded rationality, within sort of satisfied, getting the best available deal for the resources that you have available. You don't aim for absolute perfection, because that's inefficient. You use this empathetic approach to drive the real attention in a real world for a real budget.
I mean, that's quite a radical message here at the Festival of Creativity, because what we're saying is sometimes mediocrity is the way to go.
Absolutely. I think it's very important there. I mean, again, what's interesting, to go back to your point about getting the unfair advantage, is that if you invest time in creating memorable advertising, that you earn people's attention initially, you can lay down memories that are much, much quicker to activate later on. And you were talking about the long and the short of it in terms of brand building and performance marketing. Henna, you were talking, I think, if I may say, a slightly more sophisticated way of establishing memories and then activating memories. That you have the big TV campaigns or the big Facebook campaigns, but then we follow up with much smaller, more efficient triggers to memory. And I think that is a very, very, this is why it's so fun working with Carlsberg. Nordic people in general, Danes and Finns are that much better than the rest of us. But that understanding of how it is worth earning attention so that you can then perhaps harvest that previous good work with cheaper, quicker, easier memories.
So I spent 37 years working in a creative agency and defending creativity, but I've also, within the agency, spent 37 years sort of kind of occasionally telling creatives, yeah, it's going to get immense attention from a tiny number of people, and that could never make sense. You know, that building cathedrals in the desert, as somebody once said. But I'm going to make a little play for the importance of creativity over and above everything we said, which is, I think it's fantastic we're measuring this stuff. I think it's fantastic that we're learning how to optimize, if you like, the cost efficiency and effectiveness of attention. But there will always be a role for creativity, because if everybody is optimizing for attention in the same way, you'll all be doing the same things, and that's boring. And therefore, everybody's attention levels will drop. So what you need to keep doing is working out, okay, in the world we are now, what's interesting now? There will be some eternal verities, but there will be things that, you know, like big emotional John Lewis style TV ads, everybody's done them, people are bored of them. There will always be some new frontier. There'll be eternal verities.
Guys, I'm going to have to stop you, unfortunately.
Well,
I think we officially ran out of time about 15 minutes ago, and we could keep going
Well,
for another
if I could
2
just
hours.
say one thing, what that means is that Lumen will never be out of business.
Oh, no. I'll give
but
you
if you
one...
keep on saying that, Les, you'll never be out of business.
I'll give you one last sentence each, because we said it's about moving attention forward. If we reconvene on that stage next year, what is the one topic that you really want to make progress with when it comes to attention?
We're going to show some more results. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're looking at now, how attention is driving sales and how we're actually making the impact in the business. So we'll come back with that.
We live in a platform world. We live in a world in which media is increasingly auction-based, and I think the opportunity for clients, the opportunity for agencies is to demonstrate how, through the use of attention, you can win.
For me, I think it's the fourth dimension that's really important. Memories are created not with one ad, but ads over time. So far, our debate about attention and the impact on sales has been pretty one-dimensional. How does one ad turn into one memory? The cumulative effect of attention, how you create and reinforce memories, I think is the next area, and something that I hope that Henna and I can share next time.
Which is kind of what I'm talking about this afternoon at 3:30 on the forum stage.
Yeah, it's a time traveller. Yeah.
See,
one year ahead.
I'm bigging him up, he's bigging me up. I think moving from, a theme here was moving from measuring to learning. I mean, you said something earlier about we learn so much about how advertising works. No, we haven't. We're really still at the beginning. And I'd love to see more general learnings about, despite the fact that things are constantly changing, you know, what are the general principles of attention?
Next year. Book your tickets now.
All great points. Thank you so much again, everyone. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for listening.